No, I'm not marching in a pride parade. Social critique. If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there's no progress. Malcom X. I think commercialization has become the onus of artistic suicide for the human genus, and nothing has such proven true than the sensitization of pride and commodifying minorities, such as LGBT, for the profitable gain of the oppressors and bourgeoisie. It is the equivalent of putting money into a vending machine so you can fill your gullet with the poison that kills you. Let's talk about what pride was. Pride was a riot. Pride was a liberation in the face of oppression. And if such a lesson is, in fact, is lost, then what separation and distinction can be made from other consumer holidays, where the plebeian and working class alike are fed the constant lie of celebration when they're funneling money through television fault lines? Such a reality has become the prerogative of the ruling class. Erase meaning, consume everything, remember nothing. Capitalism has fed itself off sown ignorance and problem fabrication, and none such case could be forgotten than pride. Even the flag has become yet another product, shoved in front of consumers until our identity is commercially condemned and commodified. Under this realization, the community is compromised and commodified. Real progress has always been in spite of the system, as the system itself has always mandated the continual control of all minorities and majorities, even if it means the fabrication of a minority or of acceptance. Of what bearing does acceptance itself have? To be accepted is to distinctify a connotation of difference or of negative being. To want acceptance is to give into subservience and be lost to the consumption of the tribe. Do we eat ourselves or let the tribe eat us, cherishing nothing? The self is non-existence if acceptance is the need, because no human wants humanity, and humanity demands every human to be human. Then is it only an ironic contrast that leads to spiritual suicide, a tension that constricts our now rather conflicted existence. Such statement appears in a grand apparatus of gesturing, but what truth have I told you? It all becomes direct once context is given behind such beholding claims. It started as a riot in a dive bar named Stonewall. You may remember it well as the Stonewall riots. Such a name is misleading, as it seems disconnected from pride. Stonewall was pride, and the month celebrates that. Stonewall was one of the first major moments in American LGBTQ history to challenge the status quo. The history of queer people has been a story of oppression, liberation, and sanction. When forgotten, we become no different than any other commercialized march. Such had been done with Memorial Day. To forget the nature of war and the truth of why they died. Imperial conquest and profit margins. We forget the history and sacrifice ourselves to corporatocracy. Modern pride does not reflect liberation, in my opinion. It reflects the corporate commodification of identity and romance. We can go further with this realization when we notice the excess amounts of sexual themes at pride parades. And this is not in direct critique of sexual identity, but BDSM and leather gear. The critique is not of kink, BDSM, or leather, but of a broader theme I have witnessed at pride parades. Fetishization and commercialization. Sexual orientation and representation has become a sexual fantasy. And with the commodification of pride, we see this ever clearer in the rising queer erotica, often pushed by cisgendered heterosexuals for a rather framed, taboo indulgent. That does not scream liberation, it screams commercialization. It is not to say these on their own are in any form bad. Erotica of any kind, kink play consensual in any kind, is acceptable. However, a trend has been formed where such is pushed to the forefront of pride parades. This hurts sex workers, erotica creatives, and queer people alike, and is purposely done for commodification and liberation of the corporate machine. When we looked back at Stonewall, it was not a celebration of kink or BDSM. It was the fight to be oneself without oppression. And that such is not present in pride parades. An argument that would counter this, seemingly, would be representation. But the question I ask is, with that implication, is being queer then explicitly sexual? Does me being gay mean you are a taboo fantasy and nothing else? Does being trans make you a commodity? Such questions under the guise of representation are forcefully answered yes with the excused exaggeration of sexual exploration. This is why it's done at Pride, but falls into a larger theme. Rainbow capitalism. Corporations have cut and corded every movement, and I relate this back to the sexual liberation movements. The issue is not intercourse, sex work, or anything of the such, but the commercialization of it. With such, it has become soulless in every sense, but is framed liberation. The same was done with porn. It was liberating to show more of your body. It was liberating to model and become the desire of men. It was liberating to become a tape that could be branded and measured in statistics. In these three examples, women were turned into a commodification. Desire was manufactured into demand. Human beings were commercialized. Again, the issue is not the product, but the industry. The watering down of sexual identity as liberation and pushed out to the masses. They had done the same with rock music, rap music, country music, done the same with punk identities. Goth was fetishized and turned into a product. They did it to women, and I am led to agree with the sentiment that queerness was made into the same. This is but one head of the hydra, but the problem grows deeper. Capitalism gutted romance and sexuality into a product and transaction, and in that humanity was murdered and romance is held hostage. What difference have we truly made in these liberations? Such a question has an answer that the Pride Parade seemed to march to. They have not freed anyone. They have not redefined freedom. They have merely commodified desire and demand and cauterized a wound that will be inflicted again as the minorities become inconvenient to the capitalist machine. Capitalism is the death of freedom and the enslavement and commodification of desire. Pride parades have been compromised by this head of the snake, along with more I shall describe. Furthermore, the infiltration of big corporations into queer spaces and these marches has been explicitly spelled out that no corporation, no matter how big or small, belongs in queer spaces or in Pride. Pride detached from modern commercialization and parades. Parades do not serve in spite of capitalism and commercial industry. To celebrate Pride, a march of the big corporations to declare oneself revolutionary and dissuade the minority oppressed by the ruling class. Pride is in direct opposition of capitalism, big corporations, and commercialization. If such is not acknowledged, then what difference is truly made but a trans flag sold $1 cheaper during the year? Big corporations have constantly fought against queer liberation, so for them to march in Pride is in direct insult to every queer person in America and the world. Of what purpose does it serve but the egotistical moral masturbation of modern society? On one head of the snake, we have dehumanized queer identity through fetishization. On this head, we have turned it into another morally meaningless statement, like progress, empathy, or allyship. They march for the public relations stunt and pretend to care for a month while we are focused, and go back to dismantling any infrastructure that could provide a meaningful revolution to queer oppression. Of what such progress has Geico made, or any insurance? Since when did National Grid fight in queer liberation? I didn't notice Wegmans striking against recent bathroom bans. If silence is compliance, then lying is sabotaging. Such corporations do not belong in Pride, and Pride, again, does not belong in the hands of capitalism and its oppressors. Additionally, Pride parades have accentuated the prevalent idea of, on my time, inconvenience and compliance, but rather being called non-violent protest. It is in the same laughable vein as No Kings, and reinforces compliance through moral conviction and controlled resistance. It reached a shallow form of protest equivalent to writing letters to congressmen. Such is rather important, but needs to be substantiated with direct action. If you don't believe in violent resistance in the face of a violent system, I propose the question: if someone beats you, do you suppose it's better to be silent? No. Wouldn't it be wrong? I mean, violence isn't justifiable. No one should lay your hands on you. But wait, that someone beating you is different. They're the good guys. Oh, you have 3 broken bones and a bleeding nose? But why didn't you comply with orders? In that very paragraph, I illustrate why such ideas do not work. A system that disturbs life must be disrupted, or no meaningful change can actually be made, other than a handshake and a law never passed. I think of pride much the same. No meaningful change can be brought by these parades. It's a manufactured moral litmus test for politicians that promise but serve nothing more than an empty promise and meaningless reassurance. Compare pride parades to Stonewall, and such a distinction is directly identified: commodify, distinctify, destroy, and decimate. Capitalism's apparatus with this head of the snake. We fetishize and dehumanize. Then we disorganize and divide and schedule the resistance within the given hours, so no real inconvenience or progress can be made. That is another head of the snake. Now let's move to the next one: the dissolution of identity. Even within queer communities, there's queer oppression. Such shall be listed: LGBT without the T, hatred to other kin, whitewashing. This is evident and purposeful to the capitalist system. It is purposeful, divides liberation, and lets the rats fight among themselves, so they never see the cat in the room. It is the same reasons 2 parties exist in America: the constant illusion of choice framed as right and wrong, when both sides have betrayed us slowly. Revolution can only become from the hands of the cold, dead oppressors. They create tribes within us and dehumanize the tribes. It's a moral mental gymnastics, where the consequences equal your card to the club you were never invited to. It's disgusting, this moral game where no one is righteous, but everyone is loved. It's rather dehumanizing, as everyone in the community deserves to be here, but the division is made. Now, where do pride parades fit into this? In my critique of pride parades and their hypocrisy, there will be a counter-resistance formed to explicitly state I am transphobic, I am homophobic, and I am against sex work. If such claims were true, I wouldn't write this. But pride parades serve to manipulate a perception that becomes reality. If you support a pride parade, then you are morally good, despite any action or belief you hold, because you supported a glorified commercial advertisement. You are now a good person. Never mind you called that girl a dyke. Never mind you called that man a fag. Never mind you sexualize a feminine man. Never mind you act creepy around trans women. Such things are now irrelevant because you support pride. Never mind that pride was a riot. It's a comfortable resistance. A controlled resistance. That is yet another head of the Hydra. And because I will not march in one, I have critique, I am then absolutely queerphobic, despite decency or elongated argument. Because such would make us face a rather uncomfortable reality. That is the nature of progressive movements in the modern age. A moral hashtag, slogan, talk, and no action. Their walk is comparable to a slow, crawling limp. For these reasons highlighting, I will not attend Pride. I will not attend such things that have betrayed my community. And if that makes me the enemy, which I doubt it would with most queer people, then I would rather be the enemy and be individual. Pride parades have fallen into the modern conformity, framed under the illusion of community. Community must worship individuality, and as individuality must worship and respect the community. To be free as an individual, the individual must consume the tribe wholly and thoroughly, until only the bones of what once remains is the only thing that remains. Diversity is in direct opposition to conformity. Parades are in direct opposition to diversity, and choke on the leash like apparatus of capitalism. What difference here is made to parades? Joy and love is important, but a movement without anger is a simple inward masturbation of ego. We do not need acceptance. Acceptance connotates we're different. Such division creates paradoxical control, and such is a meaningless vice. So no, I cannot and will not march in a parade. Of what point does it serve? I spit in the face of modern conformity, framed as individuality, liberation, and progression. Progression lies in the corpse of commercialism, and parades distract from that. It is a joy to distract from resistance. And to march in it, myself, is to portray my message and morality. So no, I will not march in the Pride Parade. I will never say that progress is being made. If you stick a knife in my back 9 inches and pull it out 6 inches, there is no progress. If you pull it all the way out, that is not progress. The progress is healing the wound that's below, that the blow made. And they haven't begun to pull the knife out, much less heal the wound. They won't even admit the knife is there. Malcom X.